Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you
Can you hear
doing?
me?
Yes, I can.
I'm good. How
Can
are
you hear me
you?
clear? Doing well.
Yes,
Thank you very
absolutely
much.
loud and clear. So thank you, Ashmit, for joining us today. I'll give everybody a quick introduction, although I don't think you need an introduction, but just for everyone's information, today we are on Let's Talk Design. We'll be talking about designing luxury spaces using stone patterns and textures. We have with us Ashmit Alag from Transform Design. I'll quickly introduce Ashmit. Ashmit is renowned worldwide for his contribution to neuroarchitecture and visual merchandising. In 2015, he was awarded the 40 Under 40 title by Design Retail USA and has been honored by the Art Institute of Seattle, USA, on their Wall of Fame. Ashmit has been residing in India for almost 16 years and passionately runs his design practice called Transform Design with offices in New Delhi and Singapore. The two common features in all their projects are luxury and timelessness. A lifelong academic, he also established a chain of highly specialized design institutes called Academy of Applied Arts. It is dedicated to the field of bespoke interior design, retail design, and visual merchandising. Thank you, Ashmit, for joining us today on the Let's Talk Design series by A-Class. Uh, it's really an absolute pleasure to hear from you your insights on working with stone and designing luxury spaces. So we have a quick format
Thank
wherein
you.
I'll ask you about 5 to 6 questions, and post that we'll take some questions from the audience as well. So if you're
Certainly.
okay, then we can start right now. So,
Absolutely.
Ashmit, since the topic for today is designing luxury spaces, my first question to you is, with your experience in the luxury home segment, right? What are the current trends and what's new really? What is happening currently?
In terms of interiors, I would say that we're looking at more spaces which are blended, where you blend the classical and the contemporary together, like a kind of eclectic or a fusion. However, at Transform, we don't
Right.
necessarily follow trends because I feel that trends come and go, but the house stays forever. You know, and when you do an interior design for a house, you're doing it at least for a decade. So it's important to get the understanding of what is trendy, but it's even more important to understand what is timelessness. And that's the way all our projects are.
Interesting. And how do you think that translates to your work with stone as a material?
Stone is timeless as well, something that took really millions of years to create and maybe really decades to be able to enjoy. It's also an extremely versatile material, also the most luxurious probably. So wood and stone, when you want to bring in a lot of warmth, then it's wood. And when you want to bring in a lot of sophistication, it's ideally stone. So there's just a perfect blend. For instance, RCC is called, it's like a marriage made in heaven because they both have the same contraction expansion. So timelessness completely has to do with stone and wood. It's irreplaceable. And, sometimes the point is that the best styles in the world try to replicate stone. So why not just stone?
So why, when you say that actually, why do you think uh, people prefer tiles to using stone, especially in the home segment?
The reasonable option for tiles or reasoning is that it saves time. Yeah, it's easier to install. It's cheaper to install. So if there is a time or a budget restriction, then tiles is the answer. However, tiles do sometimes become very trendy. So somebody is looking at a very contemporary space. Some areas you would need tiles. For instance, somebody wants a Spanish kind of a look, then you have to go with tiles. You have to blend it with stone. So it could be sometimes design reason, but mostly it's to do with cost and time.
Right, right. And if one was, I mean, because you say that stone is sort of timeless material, how do you think one can use stone to make it, I mean, not just cost effective, but like easy to work with?
you reduce the amount of details and you make it easier to work with. For instance, even if you need moldings, rather than doing the moldings more horizontally, if you start chamfering the stone in a vertical fashion, then it can be done on the machine. It would reduce the cost. But sometimes the point is that last bit of adornment, rather than just putting the stone out there, what is it that you can add just a tiny bit of it, and you'll end up catapulting it into a whole different thing. So sometimes the point is to not even use very expensive stones. Take something which is inexpensive, adorn it, think over it, design it in a way that it becomes unbeatable or unmatchable in terms of price. And I also believe that luxury, if you can't just buy luxury, because luxury easily has to do with exclusivity. I remember the time when I was a child, an AC car used to be called a deluxe car. And now a normal car has air conditioning. You don't have to use the word deluxe. So all luxury has to do with how many people do not have it.
Very interesting. So when it comes to, this aspect of luxury, right? What is your studio's approach to design? To luxury
But
in design?
two things necessarily. One is that anything which has to do with luxury has to do with timelessness. Because to begin with, we are buying more expensive things so that it lasts us longer. By that domain, it has to become timeless. It shouldn't be in the form of a trend or a gap. And the other word is Urdu, which is kushnuma. So luxurious spaces have to celebrate life. They can't be a sterile environment at all. And like when we talk about, so the example I would do in terms of a garment, that there could be a person who is dressed up well, nice jacket, nice shirt, nice pant, nice shoes, maybe a nice tie as well. And then suddenly another person walks in who is wearing the same garments, but also has a little pocket scarf. That one little extra detail makes all the difference. So luxury has to be about thoughtfulness, and it must reflect the style of the person. Somebody's luxury cannot be given to somebody else. Then it just becomes a commodity. And commodity can never be luxury. So it is completely about dispensability. It's not what you have, but what you do with it. And if you look at it historically, the palaces don't necessarily need to have the most expensive materials.
Absolutely.
But the way it's designed and how you use that material makes all the difference. And the way you would make the design differentiation in terms of detail, that just ensures other people cannot have it. Otherwise, who doesn't have access to materials?
Yeah.
Go ahead, you were saying something.
Would you like to share an example? Yeah, I was saying, would you like to share an example wherein you broke the traditional sort of myth of what luxury is, in any sort of residential project of yours?
Well, in my own office room as well, for instance, the stone I have as part of my office, it's a brown stone. I'm just suddenly forgetting the name, Bidasar brown. Okay. And it's a very inexpensive stone to use. And my office is on the main road, which means we get a lot of dust. And the coincidental property of Bidasar brown is that it doesn't take polish too well. And I don't need high polish, because if it's high polish, you get it dusty. And I don't want to put a carpet. Bidasar, in a way, acts in that you don't need a carpet. There is no bounce back of the light, so there's no reflection or refraction. And it's cozier to sit into. What other things we do? You can take, let's say you take, so I'll give you an inexpensive example. Let's say you use, there's this mustard stone, and I'm suddenly forgetting names now. Ita gold, yeah, there's a mustard, Ita gold stone, Jaisalmer. So you do Jaisalmer flooring, and then you embed a strip of brass into the skirting of it, and suddenly it gleams. It becomes that pocket scarf. Yeah. So there are fairly inexpensive ways, but very thoughtful. And suddenly price has got nothing to do with it. Because even if you're willing to spend 2,000, 3,000, 6,000, if it's not used thoughtfully, then it's just commodity. And luxury is never just commodity. Yeah. In fact, luxury has got nothing to do with commoditization. It has to do with how least number of people can have it. Yeah, so for instance, if I buy even a keychain for a couple of lakh rupees, and if I think that makes me luxurious, then I must not forget that the showroom I bought it from the boutique, he probably had 20 of them.
20 of them.
Scientifically, he should be 20 times more luxurious than I am, but he's not because he's not using it. So it's about consumption. It's never about just possession. And layering that with all the other materials. Go ahead. Mention that.
No, I'm saying that's a very interesting take, actually, on how one sort of approaches materials, especially when you're looking at luxury spaces, which is what everybody wants in their homes, actually. So, thank you for sharing.
I believe in saving money. Most welcome. I believe in saving money big time. Saving money is intelligence. To buy ₹100 thing for 105 rupees is not about richness. It's about lack of exposure. So how can you create, and you might have heard this term, I usually use it. I talk about the difference between the Amir and the Rais. And I believe that Amir is very dependent on money, the outside forces. And the Rais would be somebody who has transcended it. And money doesn't matter anymore. That's when you don't get into numbers. And that would be completely about luxury. It would be understated rather than just glaring in your face.
Very good. So you also spoke about timelessness. We started by talking about timelessness and grandeur, right? And like you also said, stone is a timeless material. So when you pick up specifically flooring, right, for your projects, what are the qualities that you look for to ensure timelessness in a home?
So the space has to completely resonate with whatever you're doing. It's not just one element. It's not what it is, but what it does for you. It's like when you go and buy sunglasses, I'm sure you try 20 of them because you liked all 20. But out of those 20, 10 just don't work on you at all. In fact, they rather make you look bad. 5 might actually become okay, or 2 or 3 really make you shine. So when we're buying stone, it's not that what the stone is, but what it's doing for the rest of the space. So you look at the color combination of the areas. In fact, smallest of details, for instance, with more contemporary projects, you have a lot of downlighters coming in, which land up putting a lot of glare on the floor, and then it bounces back. So when we would choose a stone, we would also have the lighting layout with us and the furniture layout in terms of where it is falling and how it's going to be. And then focal point for every space is necessary. It's very scientifically driven. And focal point is something that you can govern. This is the first thing somebody will see, because you know where the door is and you know the way the access is going to be. The door is going to be opening towards the left or the right. So you're already controlling the movement in terms of vision. And if you're controlling that, you can guide the eye and make people look at what you have decided them to look at rather than what they choose, because it's so subconscious, one would not even know. Somebody is wearing a white shirt and there's a minuscule little stain on it. You will not see the white shirt, you will see the stain. That is the focal point. And if you put psychology in design, that's the way you would be able to extract the most out of it. So colors, textures, now fortunately there are so many finishes available in stone as well. From honed to glossy to matte to lepato, all of that will end up doing stuff. And also, what is one stone doing with the next? Since majority of our projects are either modern classic or classical, there is always something which is happening in the stone. It's never just stark out there and just put a short straight skirting. It's never like that. There would always be something which is happening, and it is already planned in terms of the furniture. So even if a curtain is going to fall, what kind of a stone banding would you need around? So the curtain, sometimes you want to hide, or sometimes you really want to lift it up if it's silk or the way it's shiny. So bunch of all of that, but it's never just one exercise. I go to see all the stone that we buy. I've never bought stone, any project, where I've physically not seen it myself, because it looks very different on the picture. How people take 20 pictures before they decide to put one profile picture? It changes the color tone and everything. So that's how.
Interesting.
I believe also,
So
talking about stone and talking about timelessness.
Yeah.
But अगर कोई अपने घर का पत्थर बदल रहा है, तो करीब करीब घर बदल रहा है. It is such a big and important subject, and expensive and time consuming. Probably one of the most
That's
important
really
things.
cool.
You can replace furniture, you can replace all of that. Stone, no, big deal. Be thoughtful about it day one.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll mark that, for the future. So, since you were talking about the play of stone, right? And in your projects also, we've seen that you mix textures, you play around, you use a lot of patterns as well. So, what could you share some tips or ideas on how one can play with stone? Mixing elements or mixing textures. Like you spoke about Jaisalmer and brass, right? How like a very simple
Mhm.
thing like that can really make impact. Uh, how can you share? Can you talk a little bit more about this? This play
For
and
instance,
play of texture pattern.
so we pick up usually from a vein of a stone and then decide what the border is going to be. So let's say a lot
Yeah,
of gray is being used currently, yeah. But while gray is in fashion, there is always the risk that it might go out of fashion because anything which is in a trend will go in and out. How do you make it timeless? So with gray, currently we are incorporating white. So the point is that you take the gray and you take the lightest tone, the lightest vein in gray. Mostly in nature, you would find either gold or mustard or whites. So we're blending the white with the gray, and they both land up harnessing each other's quality. And really, maybe about 1% in terms of square feet added with the gray, it lands up bringing so much out of the gray as well. Now, if you're doing a corridor, and in classical, the corridor should never be sparkly. Okay, because when you enter any particular space, we don't look at the ceiling. We always look eye level and we look down
right.
because it's to do with our sustainable mechanism. Okay, the brain likes to see the floor area because it's a survival instinct. It's to do with the safety of the walking. So if you carry forth, for instance, we're talking about the gray over here, you carry forth the gray with the broken white in terms of a stone, and then you carry the same palette onto the walls, you'll end up making the space much bigger. Trick for small rooms is that you might have whatever floor, and then you change the skirting color, make it lighter. But if the skirting is 6 inches, take another band of 8 inches and took it on the floor. Visually, the brain gets confused. The brain likes to see that all of the surface is actually vertical and the room becomes bigger by another 6 or 8 inches on each side. So you land up increasing the space by about a foot and a half. So a bunch of this kind of things come from neuroarchitecture in terms of where we're pushing. And then grazers do that too. In terms of lighting, you could have some concealed lighting and you create some hotspots towards the floor corners. Because it sparkles, the brain likes to think that it's further distance than what it really is. So you're not physically increasing the space, but visually you'll end up increasing the space. Then with whites, we're using stainless steel now in terms of the skirting or in terms of border. Or again, you have gray and then you have a white putty on it and you have steel around it. Those kind of things. And then a lot of blending too. You might have seen that the diamond or the chest pattern has come back in a very big way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is called patang chal. Yeah. So it would be actually wrong to say it came back because it never left. It's classical, So it was always there. But the point is,
Of course.
how do you take care
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that? Because yeah, but since life is being lived today and today is contemporary, the point is always to mix both. So you are able to live timelessly, and at the same time carry forth with the way the lifestyle is. Smaller rooms as well. Powder rooms are becoming much darker than they were. They're really becoming much more glamorous. So just about everything is happening in terms of stone domain, which is surprising. And I remember I came to India about 17 years ago. Very limited options. I Botticino, Cecilia Perlato, Diana, Stotario, these were pretty much the stones that were available. And now look at what we have. Which is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I think that there's like a whole plethora of material out there, and it's like the world is opening up. Even locally, I think there's so many local stones that are around us and one has the opportunity to play around with them. My next question to you would actually be that in the residential segment, right? In interior spaces are heavy on lighting, right? There is a lot of heavy lighting, that all spaces have to deal with. So how do you how do you use stone in flooring or in other elements and yet keep the glare sort of away, or keep the spaces from being non-reflective? I mean, one thing you did mention was that obviously you have the lighting plan with you when you're designing.
Yeah, that's a big challenge, because mostly the flooring is very glossy, and with
Yeah.
more and more spaces turning white, with the advent of Michelangelo being the super hit stone right now, it is it's like the number one option right now. It's taken over all charts, all time high. Then you have this trouble. Uh, we take care of it with cove lighting, because cove is an indirect source of lighting. The downlighters, we would really downsize of them, minimum wattage. So we would use the downlighters more toward mood lighting, which means it's only going to be bouncing the light off the walls rather than providing the light in the center. And then most of the lighting, that if at all it has to be downlighters, it can be adjustable. So you ensure that you're highlighting the things that you want to see. And floor looks nicer and bigger if it's uniformly lit rather than having hotspots. So cove lighting primarily. But thank God also that with a lot of this classical and contemporary mix coming in, wall lights, which was a no-no, I believe 10 years ago, I had to explain to people why wall lighting is important. What also happens with down lighting, unfortunately, is as we have LEDs, and LEDs have a very sharp shadow factor, very high amount of glare. When you have the light coming down, the shadow from all this area falls at the eye.
Yeah.
And then there is a visual fatigue, and people don't look as nice. That's why the photographer always puts the light from the front, which was done well with wall lighting. Or now it can be done with cove lighting, or you have the downlighters, but they're kind of washing the wall and it just bounces back. And as a result, there's no glare on the floor.
I think that's a very useful tip for designers.
Yeah, sometimes, if you have a problem with the stone, you don't attack the stone, you attack something else, and then it tweaks
Yeah.
itself. It was really like working like a mechanic, finding out what else can be done about it.
Fabulous. So I'm going to now move from interiors to outside, right? Facades, right? There's obviously no end to what you can do with facades. There is also no end to what you can do with stone. Any advice or tips on how one can use stone in facades, or what you have experienced in your projects? Would you like to share something on that?
Well, we do dry cladding always. That ensures the stone doesn't seep any kind of color change. So that's a technical requirement necessary, not to save on that.
Yeah.
Also, some part of the house can ideally be in a permanent finish, and what else can be more permanent than stone? If you go to Europe, and even if you go to Regent Street and Bond Street, which means that the style is classic, but it still has a very contemporary feel to it, the limestone look. So those kind of materials can be used irrespective of the style of the house that you're doing. It also keeps the house clean. It's great for insulation, both in terms of sound and in terms of heat. Well, I'm personally not a big fan of a lot of these trendy materials. I believe you can look at the house and you can say what year it was made in. And I think it's a killjoy.
Yeah.
I'm a very loud mouth when it comes to
I agree
that,
with
but
you on
allow me
that.
to be honest.
Completely agree with you. No, it's not. I actually agree with you on that one. So, we've also spoken about how stone is a complementary material, right? It complements various other materials. What would you like to say on that?
Well, because there are so many variations in stone, not just in terms of the color, but the tenacity of the material or the gloss factor. And because it has been the oldest hard material that we have known. In fact, wood has not been as hard. We've always had a stone at the end of the axe or at the end of a hammer as well. So it has evolved with the mankind so much so. When we were gatherers and hunters, we used to be using stones, even at the tip of the arrow or even at the bit of the axe. And if you look at the kind of usage you can do, Not only again in terms of just the color, but for instance, the textures. We were mentioning it earlier. The kind of textures which have come in have brought the stone merely from, when we're not just talking about floor, we're talking about walls, we're talking about accessorization. There's just so much which is happening. I would recommend, given a chance, everybody should visit the Verona Fair once, especially the design fraternity. You know, stone is by far the most expensive thing that we put in any house. And it is also by far among the most permanent things apart from the structure. It's important to visit furniture fairs, but it's equally or more important to visit stone fair. The furniture you can go wrong with, you can change upholstery, you can do a bunch of stuff. What do you do with stone?
Very true. So, my last question to you before we sort of open up for the audience, and in fact, I'd like to ask the audience if they have any questions, please put them down here. Uh, your practice is known for its attention to detail, right? As a brand, detail design is what defines your transform design, the practice. Could you talk a little bit more about how attention to detail when it comes to stone makes all the difference?
You know, I believe when you take care of things, things in turn take care of you. Yeah. If we believe in the theory of the Big Bang in terms of evolution, then we know energy now everything came from the big mass of energy. Everything is energy. Yeah. Which makes you and me energy too, which we call living, and which makes a stone full of energy too, which we call dead. Yeah. And if you believe in the theory of God, then God made everything, which is people like you and I who are talking, and maybe stone and wood and just about everything. So either ways, you have to believe that everything is living, everything. And when you harness it, when you use it in the right way, when you use it delicately, it does certain magical things which you can't even imagine. So stone or okay, so the key materials would be what? There's metals, and then we have stone, and then we have wood. A blend of any particular three ways. And if you look at how fashion jewelry has taken over, or how design has come over, a lot of stone has started being used.
Yeah.
Stone was adorned on the walls only in the classical era, but now you see the most contemporary spaces are adorned with stone, the starkest of stones.
Yeah. Very interesting. Ashmit, thank you. I think this is really exciting. I wish I can I'm sure I have like 3 more questions to ask you, but I'm not going to do that. I'll actually take some questions from the audience. Uh, I think somebody had asked about. Uh, Somebody asked a question when you were talking about lighting. So can you explain a little bit more about your approach to lighting and the use of stone? I think you were explaining how how obviously cove lighting is one thing
The
that you
cove
spoke about,
lighting, yeah,
to sort of bring
yeah.
out.
So
Yeah.
the challenge with the new application of stone is that stone is polished really strong, you know, and then it has a very high gloss factor. But when you have a very high amount of
Right.
gloss factor, any kind of light which falls on it jumps back and creates a hot spot. That's the problem. So you need to diffuse the lighting, but you cannot diffuse the downlighters, not a possibility. So you need to now introduce light sources which are not hot spotting the floor, but are coming from indirect sources. So wall lighting is one, cove lighting is another, wall washing, or any indirect source of light from the floor and up, any kind.
Okay, okay, thank you. I don't think there's any other questions. A lot of people have loved your approach. I mean, I'm just going through the comments. They've loved it that you've spoken about indirect lighting sources, ambient lighting, and you've also spoken about details.
Oh, I
Yeah,
guess
so
we
I think
spoke too soon. There's
there are
suddenly
no more
questions.
questions. Oh, yes. Okay. So, which is your favorite marble or stone?
Michelangelo by far. I mean, even the name is so beautiful. There's this particular thing about Michelangelo.
Yeah.
It's not completely known why it's called Michelangelo, but one fair guess is that that's
Yeah.
the stone he used for his sculptures, and the hardness of it. So if you go to old Europe and you see if a sculpture was made 400 years ago, and there are thousands of pigeons really coming every week and sitting even on the finger, that stone or that finger hasn't broken yet. That's the tenacity of the stone. And it is also not completely opaque. It's more like onyx. You can actually pass the light through it in some ways. So when the light falls on it, it doesn't just become one layer flat like a tile. The light actually permeates and then bounces back, makes it look really, I mean, with the colors of the Michelangelo, they just look so pretty. They're like a wave. So it's never in a stark environment. I think it's the best stone for contemporary currently.
Okay. Okay. And your next question is actually on Michelangelo. If one is using a clean off-white Michelangelo in the house, what can one use to complement it as a border?
Ah, well, not even sky is the limit. Currently, we're experimenting on four different mother of pearls, um, semi-precious gemstones with brass, with stainless steel, uh, with Armani bronze. Now, there's no such thing as Armani bronze. It's a bronze color pathar, and different people call it different. But yeah, that bronze thing. Or maybe you might want to borrow the tone from the doors or the other fixed element that is going to be in the house and start resonating it. So then it doesn't
Okay, very
become
interesting.
just another design
So,
on its own, but it lands up taking from the space.
yeah, great, thank you. At A Class, we are following, I mean, this entire series that we've conceptualized is called Let's Talk Design. It's hashtag Let's Talk Design. If in one sentence you had to say something on Let's Talk Design when it comes to stone, what is that one statement going to be?
Timeless luxury. Not one word, but I'll put a hyphen in between.
That's fine. We actually wanted, I mean, you had the liberty to give us a full sentence, but timeless luxury says more than many words, I think. So, yeah,
No,
thank
we
you.
we also
That's fabulous. We'll
even in
be
the bedside
using, yeah.
drawers, yeah, in the nightstands, in the bedside drawers. If somebody is really fond of reading, we line it with the marble on the top book drawer, and then we usually etch it out so that there is a space to keep the book, because you can't put book on a suede or a leather and it's passe. And if you put it on velvet or suede, if you put the book in the wrong way, it's going to leave a mark and you can't uncomb it, even if you leave it overnight. But the point is not just that. The point is that it should also have a little crevice for a pencil. So when you would put a pencil in it, it should just sit because it has that. But it must also have a softer look in the front. So even if you close or open the drawer 1,000 times, it never hits anything, and you always have a sharpened pencil. Because most people who like to read with a book like to underline or do something. So it's truly that thoughtfulness which would make anything luxurious.
Thank you so much for sharing these details that you adopt in your design approach. Ashmit, big thank you from A Class from the A Class family. This year, A Class is also celebrating 50 years, and as a gesture to thank you for your participation in this dialogue, they are planting a tree on your behalf. You'll be getting a
Oh, very nice.
certificate from them soon. So thank you
Thank you
once
very
again.
much. Very
This
thoughtful.
video is recorded and put up on A-Class social media platforms. Please feel free to share it wherever you like. Thank you so much for spending your
Certainly.
time with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much as
Thank you.
well.
It was a real
Bye bye.
pleasure. Yeah. Bye.
Likewise. Likewise, Tanya. Thanks.